Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another World War II Battlefield 1943 commentary. A lot of you guys were requesting that I do another one of these because you enjoyed the last commentary, which I spoke about Japanese soldiers holding out even after World War II ended. And if you didn't see that one, there's a link in the description box. Go check it out. It's a very interesting topic, and the reason why I spoke about it was because I was so interested in it. And I was really interested in trying to just understand the mindset of these Japanese soldiers to hold out for so long. Now, the topic that I have at hand now is regarding the atomic bombs and why we dropped them. Was dropping them a good thing, and did we have other options? And this is a touchy topic, and the reason being is because sometimes at war, there's no right option. You know, you go left, you go right, it doesn't matter. The results aren't good. And this was one of them. I mean, just imagine yourself as President Truman right now. Franklin D. Roosevelt died, and now you're being put in charge to lead your people, the American people, to victory. And even though there's victory in Europe, there still isn't victory in Japan. And with our mindset today, like the way we look back at it, we would just be saying to ourselves, well, you're going to win in a few days anyway, so, or a few weeks or a few months, so it really doesn't matter, does it? Back then, though, we didn't know that we were going to drop the atomic bombs. We didn't know that the Japanese were going to surrender when we dropped the atomic bombs. All we knew was that the Japanese were determined enemies that were going to fight to the finish. If you look at the surrender rates between the German soldiers and the Japanese soldiers, there was a huge difference. At one time, an entire battalion of German soldiers surrendered. 300,000 German soldiers surrendered. Entire regiments of German soldiers surrendered because they just didn't have the will to fight anymore. And the thing about it is that the Japanese soldiers were different. On Iwo Jima, I believe we only captured 17 surrendering soldiers. That was it. The rest of them either died in battle, did a bonsai charge, held a grenade to their chest and pulled a pin, committing suicide like that, and shooting themselves and things like that. The Japanese basically believed in this whole afterlife thing and dying for the emperor. That was their thing. And there was even Japanese civilians that did this. And even non-Japanese civilians, the civilians of Saipan, the Japanese told them that when the Americans came, they're brutal. They're like barbarians. They were gonna rape their women. They were just gonna torture them and things like that. And what happened was, when the Battle of Saipan was coming to a close, and the Saipan civilians saw that the Japanese lost that battle, they basically, a lot of them jumped off a cliff. That's what the Americans saw. They saw Japanese women, children, families just throwing themselves off of cliffs. There's footage of this. If you could go and search it up, there's footage of a Japanese woman. She jumped off the cliff, and that's all you see. You see her falling off the cliff. It's very graphic shit. And this was the mindset of the Japanese soldiers, and this is what we knew. This is what our vision of the war was going to be. And the two options that Truman had in front of you, imagine yourself as Truman right now, and you're given two options. There were probably more options than that, but I haven't really looked into that. These were the two main options. And these two options were, A, we could drop atomic bombs. Maybe after dropping the first one, they might surrender. Maybe they won't surrender at all after dropping all these atomic bombs. And the second option was invading the Japanese mainland. And there was no option of just, oh, let's just drop atomic bombs everywhere and just kill them all like that. That wasn't going to work at all. That's not the way you win a war. And that would mess up the atmosphere and the earth and the ecosystem and all that shit. That would mess that up real bad too, that many atomic bombs. But the second option was invading the mainland of Japan. And from what we saw on Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the estimates were that it was going to take 5 million soldiers, 5 million troops, along with all the equipment, the doctors, the tanks, the rifles, all that. Along with all that, it was going to take 5 million troops. And they estimated casualties. The highest estimate was 1 million dead. on the first wave, or 1 million casualties on the first wave, which casualties include wounded, dead, and missing, and I believe, yeah, also captured as well. So they predicted 1 million casualties on the first wave, and not to mention on the Japanese side, that was the 1 million casualties were just our side. The Japanese side, how many of them were gonna die? How many Japanese civilians were gonna die? And just imagine if they actually did invade the Japanese mainland, if we actually did send 5 million troops, the collateral damage, the death, the horror, the resources that were going to be taken to use this, the time as well. They predicted a year minimum to successfully secure the Japanese islands. So the better option, it's not really a better option if you think about it. You're basically choosing how many live, how many die. But what Truman did was choose the option that were going to cost less lives, was going to cost less time, less resources. And it wasn't a good option at all, you know. There was no good option. Like I said, you go left, you go right, the results are still bad. And that's basically what the atomic bombs were. That's the reason why we dropped them. We had no idea if they were going to surrender on the second one. There was plans to drop a third atomic bomb. But I'm sure if the Japanese didn't surrender to all 3 atomic bombs, I'm sure our only option would have been left to invading the mainland, in which Soviet troops, American troops, British troops, and a lot of other European countries, French troops, and they were all gonna join in on this as well, because the Japanese were the last country basically in the Axis power, and the Japanese they were the type of soldiers to fight to the finish. If you guys want to watch a story about one of the Japanese holdout troops, I actually just watched it last night. It's really interesting, and he speaks about it, and he speaks about it lightly. You know, he's smiling and everything like that. And he was the Japanese soldier that surrendered in 1974. That's pretty ridiculous. I mean, just going up to this guy and saying, "Hey, when did you serve in World War II?" Well, I served from 1944 to 1974. That's mind-blowing right there. But a lot of people are also asking me about the kamikazes. Why didn't they just land the planes? Well, the kamikazes couldn't land the planes. 1, their cockpits were usually locked. There was no way of getting out. 2, the way they were trained to fly. They were trained to take off, and they were trained to crash. Of course, they didn't practice the crash method, because then that would defeat the purpose of kamikazes. But the reason why they did this, because it was more effective. It was quicker. You know, you didn't have to train him to land, because landing isn't easy. So they didn't know how to land, and the cockpits were closed. People always ask me, why didn't they just at least try to land? Well, they were usually escorted to their targets, and the reason being is because a lot of them weren't taught navigational skills in the air, because of the fact that it was going to take too long to do that. So they were usually escorted by fighters to their targets, and then, you know, if they didn't do the deed, if they didn't do the kamikaze attack, they were probably going to be shot down by their own people. And a lot of them were dragged to these planes. They were forced to be kamikaze pilots. Of course, some of them volunteered, and that was, I believe, in the first wave of kamikaze attacks when it first started, a good amount of them volunteered. But the kamikaze attacks were another example of how the Japanese were going to fight to the end, and how they rather die than surrender. So that's why we dropped the atomic bombs. And it wasn't a good option. There was no good options, but it was the only option that we had to save lives. So that's the atomic bomb topic. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you have your own insight on this, or your own bit of history that you want to talk about, or whatever you want to say, you know, just let it off your chest. There's a comment section down below for that. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to click that like button, favorite the video, subscribe if you're new here. I'm definitely going to be doing more of these Battlefield 1943 history topics. So till next time, guys, peace.